just changing and growing into other forms of hatred towards one another, being pitted against one another. I think it's a thing. And then just the whole thing of where, like, being Black, a lot of people, they don't celebrate it. They don't feel like this is something to be proud of. Like you've been just scarred over the years, from being Black, like how you were talked to, how you were treated, just different things that I think that when you see another person that's Black, even if you look at yourself, you're probably not proud of who you are. You're probably not proud that you're Black. When you see somebody else, it's easier to hate them because it's like self-hatred. Like, it's like how it just comes out, it's so I think that it's one of those things to where it's just deep. It's very layered, it's very deep. And I think that it's really going to take for us as a community to really just identify where we come from with all of this and try to find ways to, like, really make strides towards being better than, what I'm saying? Like seeing ourselves, starting with ourselves, seeing ourselves differently, like seeing ourselves in the next person. So it's like, well, I wouldn't want somebody to do that to me. Like, I love myself, but if you don't have that love for yourself, if you haven't been given that love, it's like I said, you got more systems and more complexities to it. You've been brought up in an environment that has not shown love, an abusive environment, like a toxic environment, all of these different things where people are just acting out of emotion because they don't know how to channel these emotions and things like that. When you have an environment like that, then yeah, you may think that the only option is the only way to handle a situation is fighting or shooting or killing or whatever. And so, to answer your question, I just think that it's layers. I think that it's very layered, and I don't think that it's an easy fix. I don't think that it's a one type of solution. I just think that it's something that's going to take time, and it's going to take patience, and it's going to take an immense amount of understanding of the issue to be able to begin to correct it and do better by it.
I think that's something that should be definitely exposed. We should really start to think about why we do the things we do, because at the end of the day, it is systemic and it's not our faults, but we have the power to understand and change. So all of this kind of ties into interracial crime, which so far and for the past 20, 30 years has just been a leading cause of death in specifically the Black community. And I'm curious to know if you think that it can be avoided, if you think we could somehow lower the amount of homicides that are just plaguing our community.
So back to what I was saying, the problems it's much deeper. Yeah, it is a systemic design. And do I think it could be like avoided? I think it could be limited. I think, like I said, if members of our community, if we come together, if we talk about this, because a lot of times it's not talked about. When I started this campaign, I was looking for, statistics and see who's advocating on this issue. And I was looking up Black on Black, and I saw so many things come up like, well, we're not going to talk about Black on Black. And I guess it's everything is in timing, right? It's how you say something, how you do something, and the timing of when you do it. And so a lot of times these conversations will come up, after a white person kills a Black person, then the white people that's trying to be, I guess the devil's advocates, they would say like, well, what about Black on Black crime? So then you have all of these Black people that's going to come up and advocate it, for us and say like, it's not, don't try to isolate us to just Black on Black crime. Don't try to just make it like it's a Black thing. It's an intraracial crime thing. Crimes happen within one's race. Got it, right? And I was following that. I got it. So I was like, okay, so let's be politically correct. And let's talk about it at a different time when we're not talking about a George Floyd, or we're not talking about a Trayvon Martin. So when we're not talking about one of those civil rights issues, like, let's talk about it when none of that is on the table, because it has to be talked about. And that's one of the things that I would want to see. It's like, okay, if you want to use a more politically correct term, let's talk Black interracial crime then, because it happens, it's real. And let's talk about it amongst our community to see how we're going to address it. Because one thing that I feel, you know, like, I'm not going to say highly offended. I'm not easily to be offended, right? I'm gonna be honest. But one thing that is very disheartening to me is that we can come together when a white person or somebody, a non-person of color, they hurt us, right? We can come together, we can march, we can black out our social medias, we can do all of these things, right? But it happens so often that it's a person of color taking another person of color life, and it's just like a RIP. You know what I'm saying? It's just a RIP. It's like, we're so, and it's so ingrained, it's so normal for us that it's just like, dang, RIP big homie, you know, or dang, that's messed up. And it's like, we not advocating for that. We're not using that same energy to be like, man, this is the problem. This is the number one cause of death amongst, you know, young boys that's 16 up until 34. Like, leading cause of death is, you know, premature homicides. And it happens, you know, at the hands of one another. It's not other people doing this to us. So it's like, I just think, let's take some responsibility in the matter. Let's talk about these things, and let's really start putting our heads together. Like, well, what can we do to be better? What can we do to change the narrative? Because it's imperative that we do, because for every little, like for my young son, for my young nephews, you know, like, they could easily, it's like the trajectory for them to be able to be caught up in a situation just as my brother, it's so, like, I mean, the chances that happens, you know, like, it's a high chance that could happen. And I just don't want to see that happen. I want to feel like that I'm doing something. I don't want another sister or mother to have to continuously feel this, right? Because I couldn't even imagine if it was my son. So my heart just goes out to my mother and every other mother, you know, that loses a son to this. But it's like, we have to do something. Let's start this conversation and stop being reactive to when somebody triggers us to want to give that. Well, we're not talking about Black on Black crime. Let's be, you know, like, proactive, and let's talk about Black on Black crime. I'm sorry. Interracial Black crime.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about it. Let's be politically correct, and let's talk about it, and let's put it on the table.
Why does raising awareness to this issue help? I know it's a controversial topic, which is why a lot of people shy away from it, but why do you think this is actually going, you know, could have an effect on the issues at hand?
I think the first thing to change is acknowledgement. And until you acknowledge anything, nothing will ever change. And I think that for people who shy away from the topic, it's fear. Fear is the next thing. You're not going to be able to change if you fear change, right? Fear of it being controversial, fear of it being taken incorrectly. You start with like intent, right? So if your intent is pure, your intent is right, your heart is right, and you really want to see a positive change for the greater good, stand firm and boldly on that. And that is why this situation and this issue should be addressed and discussed, because we do need to see change. Those numbers need to drastically decrease. You know, I would love to see that, you know, Black men, that they're dying, you know, prematurely from other things, by, you know, just freak accidents, more than it is like a violent act of crime, right? In other races, I can say, in comparison to a white man's life, the top 10 causes of death, premature homicide, like violence and things like that, that does not come up. It does not, it's not in the top 10, right? And I would love to see that for our young men, our older men and everything like that. I would love for them to see their lives develop and become more fruitful and just have the same opportunities to be able to just grow in peace. Like, I think that that's a beautiful thing. And I think that if we can help that to happen within our own community, I think that would be just a super beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Wow. That's well put. So that's going to lead me to my last question, which you can really keep it short and simple. What do you think is the solution to stopping the cycle of violence in our community?
Like I said before, I think just first acknowledging the issue. And then, to be honest, I don't have the answers. I really don't. I think that it's acknowledgement first and opening up, opening up the floor to have several discussions with several prominent leaders in the community, activists in the community, politicians within the community, what can be done. And we all putting our heads together to figure out possible, plausible solutions that could kind of help to reduce. I think saying stopping it's an overambitious statement, because I think to stop something it's a lot. It's like I said, it's layered. It has a lot of complexity. So we may not be able to stop it, but to reduce, I think we have that power to be able to reduce it. It's something that could be done. What exactly? Listen, that's why I'm starting this. That's why I'm starting it, just to start the conversation, because I don't know what, but I would love to know. I would love to put my head together with other people who would love to know, and to come up with some type of viable solution that could really spark change.